All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. I'm going to say good morning to some people who are here. Hamad is here, so good morning, Hamad. Simran is here. Good morning, Simran. Sean is here. Good morning, Sean. Basil's here. Good morning, Basil. And second Basil is also here. Sorry. Good morning. Oasis here. Good morning to you. And Reza's here. Good morning, Reza. So, good morning. Um, yeah, let's dive into where we were yesterday. So I think we were looking at this documentary called "What Holds Women Back," right? And that's one of the things I'd like to talk to you about once the sort of documentary is over. But I guess we'll just sort of proceed through it and then discuss. Okay. So I'm just gonna sort of I'm gonna skip. I got a couple slides here, but I'm just gonna come back to them. I think we'll start watching the documentary again, and then, hopefully we'll have some more people here to have a discussion with by then, okay? So, for online people, of course, the link and the questions are in Microsoft Teams. I think we agreed to watch 20 minutes of it yesterday, so we'll start at 20 minutes. And again, it's not that long, so I think we'll watch right through to the end. And then once we get to the end, then we can discuss some of these questions. Okay, so without further ado, I'll let you do that. Again, the link's in Microsoft Teams. Watch from 20 minutes until the end, and then we'll come back and discuss. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so again, short little documentary. Maybe nothing huge in there. Oops, I'm gonna put this back on the screen. But maybe, right? Maybe there's some things to talk about. So, what kind of things are we hearing from these young women? What things kind of stand out to you in this little documentary?
They all have different rules.
Okay, that's true enough, right? Every culture is going to have slightly different rules for people, gender rules, and and different amounts of freedom, right? And certainly families are going to as well, right? Some families are, really kind of strict with their kids. Some families are kind of loose, but that's kind of normal to see those differences. Yeah.
Like, did Paul disagree with the fact that porn affects the way a man looks at a woman?
Oh
Did he
yeah.
disagree
Okay.
with that?
What's that?
Did he disagree with that, or he agreed with it? Like,
Okay. So the two young men in the alleyway, they were talking about porn and what
how they view him, like a
did
woman.
did the host disagree?
No, like not the host. The
The
one
other guy?
Yeah,
No, he said he disagreed.
he said he disagreed with
Like,
it.
he said it doesn't change his view.
It does, like for me, like I'm pretty sure it does.
Okay. How do you so those two guys those two guys in the alleyway had a few interesting statements, right? So one of the things was that they said, oh yeah, we watch porn, it just happens, right? Whoops, right? Just happens somehow, and they said, yeah, but it doesn't really change the way that they look at women, right? But Rafay, you would disagree. Why would you disagree with those guys?
Cause like when you watch porn a lot, it just like changes your it just changes how you view the girl.
Okay.
That's true, right?
I wouldn't say how you view the girl, but the personal experience.
Not personal.
I would say that it's just like, it makes me want to try more different things. Like, porn stars are usually like they get paid, so that's why they don't mind doing it. But then your partner might not want to do it, and like,
Yeah. So there's certainly, porn
it
is a.
provides a facade.
What's that?
It provides like a facade of some sort, form,
A,
like a veil.
a facade? In what
Yeah.
way?
Mm-hmm, I agree.
A false front? In what way?
Of sex, yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you could talk about with regard to porn, and that's one of them, right? Is that, maybe at its best, it does serve as a form of sexual education, right? People can find out what they like or find out maybe what interests them through porn, right? And lots of people with kind of, slightly kind of different sexualities, or they're interested in different things, or they have little fetishes, they've found that they've kind of discovered that about themselves through porn, right? So, there's a little argument to be made that, porn can be good, it can be empowering for people, it can allow them to kind of learn more about themselves. That is to some degree, that is true, I would say.
It's highly dependent on the person as well.
On the viewer.
Yeah,
O-
the viewer.
Okay, how is it dependent on the viewer? Like what do you mean?
I feel like most people know how to differentiate real life from porn, but some people blur the line.
Yeah. So is that true? Can people tell the difference between the fake world of porn and the real life?
Most
Most
can, something like that.
can.
I feel like most.
Like those who cannot be called like thirsty, something like that.
Call them what?
We call them thirsty.
Thirsty. Okay, I thought that meant something slightly different, but okay. So maybe there's some people who, blur the lines a little bit, right? But the idea is most of us can tell the difference, right? When the guy shows up to deliver the pizza, he's not delivering the pizza, right?
Yeah.
you know how it's gonna go, right? But I don't know. So the thing that I always think about with socialization and particularly with porn is that, you know, yes, the logical part of your brain here, your prefrontal cortex, is looking at this and saying, okay, I know what this is. This is fake, right? These are performers, there's a script, there's a sound guy and a lighting guy, and, you know, everyone knows what they're supposed to do, and it's all choreographed, and I know this is not entirely real, right? But sometimes the question I wonder is, does the rest of your brain know that, right? Because your brain is made up of all kinds of different structures and wiring, right? And we don't have control over all of it, right? Lots of things that are going on in your brain you're not aware of right now, right? And again, it is, you know, your brain is created by socialization, right? It's created by your experiences. Remember, did we talk about in this class, did we talk about feral children? You know, where like kind of like Mowgli in the Jungle Book, where they find, if they find like, there's a few historical cases where young children have been found, they were lost in the jungle, somehow they survived for years and years, and then they were brought back to civilization and kind of attempted to re-educate them. But there's a real, when that happens, there's a real kind of limit to what these kids can learn, particularly linguistically. They never really attain full language fluency. And they don't, because their brain doesn't really wire correctly if it doesn't get social interaction, right? And so here I kind of wonder, you know, if you know, not if you watch porn like, you know, once every week or 2 weeks or whatever, but I mean, if you consume it constantly and sort of, you know, enjoy yourself while you're watching it, I kind of wonder what's going on in your brain, right? So your prefrontal cortex is like, yes, this is fake, I know what I'm doing here, this is not real, but what's happening in the rest of your brain, right? What kind of wiring and connections are you making in there while, you know, you're enjoying yourself, right? What is going on, right? And again, we know that people absorb social messages whether they like it or not, right? People are socialized whether they like it or not, and sometimes without their knowledge, right? They will absorb certain ideas. And so, you know, there's lots of porn out there, but, you know, porn is a medium that is made primarily by men and for men, right? And so what we see in it is often, you know, either the fantasies of men, or at least what porn producers think are the fantasies of men, right? And so, I don't know, what else did we hear those guys saying in the alleyway that kind of stood out to you?
If you don't want compliments, then stop wearing makeup.
Right, right. So they were talking about. So he was saying, you know, the host was saying. Did anyone catch his name?
Ross.
Ross. So Ross, that's right, Ross. Ross was saying, you know, I've heard from a lot of girls that they're tired of all the kind of sexual comments and sort of light sexual harassment. You know, they want it to stop. And, you know, if I brought them here and they said, hey, can you guys cut it out, would you stop? And then their response was, well, yeah, of course we would, but we think they like the attention, right? You know, if they didn't want those comments, then, you know, why dress that way, right? Why wear makeup if you don't want those comments?
Dumbest thing I've heard.
That is the dumbest thing that is said in this in this documentary. But why is it dumb?
They know it's a lie. It's just like they're on BBC, that's what they say, I guess.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to know. It's hard to know if what people say on camera is true, right? Because they.
Exactly, it's scripted.
I don't think it's scripted, but they definitely know the camera is there, right? I think, like Vigdis's mother, I think was acting really weird, because I think she was nervous about the camera, and she was, you know, a little probably more giggly than she is normally. But so yeah, the camera is always a thing, right? But Yeah, why was that comment? Why was that comment kind of dumb, or why did it stand out to us? That if girls don't want those kind of comments, they should just, not dress up.
People just have the freedom of doing what they want. I guess. Like men can dress any way they want. So why not women, you know?
Well, and women can dress however they want, but when men dress however they want, nobody says anything.
That's it. Like look good. Nothing's like.
Yeah.
I mean, sexual comments is redundant.
What's that?
Sexual comments are redundant.
Why do you say that?
You don't need to tell someone that. Yeah, you look hot. I've had sex with you.
Well, no, you don't need to you don't need to tell anyone that.
Yeah.
But do women tell men that very often?
No, not at all.
Nope. But do men tell that to women? They do, right? So yeah, you don't need to say that. But why do men say that? Why do men make inappropriately sexual comments? Because that's what Lulu and her friends are complaining about, right? And I apologize, even though it's ironic that Lulu's from the UK, so her first language is English, but she's the hardest one to understand. But Lulu and her friends are complaining about that very thing, right? They're like, these guys won't stop with these sort of sexual comments and talking about porn and making jokes about gang rape and like.
I think it could be the association
media,
with
yeah.
porn.
One thing, there could be their socialization.
The association with porn. Like it's wired into their brain.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I was about to say.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to think about too, right? Because how old do you think those dudes were in the alleyway?
16, 17.
Okay, let's say they're 17. When do you think they started watching porn?
13, 14.
Yeah, if you're lucky, right?
I mean, a lot of people start when they go through puberty.
Well, and that's an issue with porn, right? Is that it is freely accessible to anyone who can Google things, right? And so lots of young people are watching porn, basically from the beginning of puberty, right? As soon as they become, even before they become interested in sexual activity, they can find it, right?
As soon as they find out what they can do.
Well, yeah, and I think this is an important thing because what's happening during puberty is that your brain is actively wiring, right? Your kind of sex drive and sexual orientation is coming online. You're sort of thinking about all this stuff. You're sort of noticing, I was going to say the opposite sex or gender, but whoever you might be interested in, you're starting to notice those people, right? And there's a lot of brain activity that's going on, right? And so what is happening? How are you modifying that brain activity by watching, super explicit videos and enjoying your private time at the same time, right? Like how are you modifying the wiring of your brain, right?
You keep on watching the girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then that's how you think.
Well, it does. It does affect how you think. Some young people have reported that they actually have trouble sort of making things happen when they have a real partner because they've kind of become so conditioned to becoming aroused from the video and from the fact that the scenarios in the video are kind of super explicit that real life is kind of not that sexy anymore, right? And so they kind of have trouble making things happen with real people because they're so conditioned to looking at the screen, right? And that's scary, I think, right? That's a scary thing to have had to have happen, where you condition yourself to respond to what's on the screen rather than, a real life scenario, which I think most people would prefer. So that's kind of concerning, I think, for young people. But also concerning, I think, for women, right? Because women are, in the fantasy land of porn, women are used, right? Women are sexual objects, right? And increasingly women are, there's some light abuse, there's manipulation, there's coercion, there's incest, there's, you know, there's sort of porn that is kind of, you know, in real life it would be sexual assault, right? In porn it's not, right? In porn it's, you know,
Glorified.
what's that?
It's glorified in porn.
Well, it's normalized, right? And certainly there's lots of reality porn out there that is sort of meant to blur the line, right? Even though, yes, we know it's all fake, we know it's scripts and cameras and directors, we know that, but it looks real, right? It's shot in a way that looks like some dude just went out and, you know, found a girl, right? Just with his camera. And again, it's not like that, but it looks that way. And again, I, you know, challenge you to think about it, because a lot of what's going on in your brain is not within your awareness, right? It's going on under the surface. And, you know, just like when we talked about, just like when we watched Mean Girls, we said, you know, Regina was a powerful agent of socialization, right? She was beautiful, she was wealthy, she was popular, she was manipulative. People couldn't help but be influenced by her, right? And porn is the same thing, right? Porn is a powerful agent of socialization, right? And it can shape people's attitudes and behaviors even without them really intending to do that, right? And I think, you know, most people don't go to porn to be socialized. Most people don't go to porn to, you know, be educated on how men and women should relate to each other. You know, they go there to enjoy themselves, right? And again, I challenge you to do a Google. I challenge you to do a Google search for the top websites, like websites with the top number of hits. And I guarantee you that in the top 10 you'll see, you know, Facebook and Google and things like that. And then you'll see a bunch of porn sites, right? So not only is it a powerful agent of socialization because people are kind of watching it sometimes compulsively while enjoying themselves, but also huge numbers of people are tuning into these sites, right? Did you Google it, Ben? What do you see?
Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, so this media is again a powerful agent of socialization, but since everyone's uncomfortable talking about it, we can't really be aware of what's going on. What'd you find?
Pornhub is in the top 10.
Okay, Pornhub's in the top 10.
3.3 billion monthly visitors.
3.3 billion monthly visitors.
It's like half the population.
Half the planet, well, statistically speaking, half the planet is tuning into Pornhub at least once a month. That's a lot of people, right? That is a lot of people.
It's more than Amazon.
It's more than Amazon. Yeah.
I just bought a porn rocket.
You just bought a what?
Porn rocket.
What is that?
Cryptocurrency.
It's what?
Cryptocurrency. About Bitcoin.
Oh, it's a Bitcoin
Yeah,
thing?
it has a porn.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought you just bought like a porn video or something.
No. Please
No, you
don't
just
do
said
that.
live stream.
Please don't do that in besides you can get it for free. Don't pay for it. No.
Do you know about Bitcoin?
Mhm.
Yeah. It has a Bitcoin named Porn Rocket.
Oh, okay.
I gonna go up because everyone know about porn. I think most people watch porn, right?
So the porn rocket thing is an investment in pornography?
Yeah. So I think it looks interesting.
Okay, well I guess we'll see. I guess we'll
Bitcoin
see.
crashed today.
What's that?
Bitcoin crashed today. It went half the price.
Yeah, I don't get Bitcoin.
It has
Like
no value.
on one hand I know how it works, but I also don't get it for the same reason that you don't. Like most things that most of the time to make money you have to provide people with value, and if you don't, there's no there's no point, right? But sometimes people get carried away and excited, and you know there's certainly money to be made, right? People have made. Who's that kid in Brazil who like just invented a new currency because he was bored, and then it's worth Did you read that? Did you read that story? No?
The Dogecoin?
Maybe. Is that what it was called? I thought I read the story, and yeah, he was just this kid who was bored, created a currency, and it's
Maybe I should do that.
Somehow
I just
worth-
pray that Elon Musk
just-
tweets about my currency.
sure,
So it skyrockets.
sure, sure. If you can make free money, why not? Okay. Okay, let's not get distracted with Bitcoin though. So, yeah, I would, without kind of coming out, I'm not going to, I'm not going to stand up here and preach against the evils of pornography kind of thing, but I am going to say that, it's probably worth us critically looking at it critically. We're not going to look at it critically, especially not on the screen, but it's worth thinking about, right? It's worth thinking about what people are watching and what they're seeing, right? It's worth thinking about the fact that, Ross in the video was talking to those guys and he said, yeah, what about this slang term to beat, right? When you beat a girl, you're going to have sex with her, right? That's what
I've never heard that.
I haven't either. It's the British thing, I guess. But what other terms do we use in the same way?
Hook up.
Hook up,
Smash.
yeah. Smash, bang, that's kind of an older one, but yeah, lots of the terminology around sex is kind of violent terminology, right? Which, again, they're saying, those guys are saying, oh, well, it's just a slang, right? It doesn't mean anything. Right, but why choose that, right?
Shows dominance.
What's that?
It makes them exhibit their dominance.
Right, maybe. Yeah, maybe it's an internalized dominance thing, right? Maybe, part of men kind of enacting their dominance and their power over women is using terms like that, right? It makes them feel strong and powerful, right? But again, yeah, it's just a word, but also words create our reality, right? Words create our experience. My all-time favorite, I forget, there's a character in, I think it's in The Office, but his slang for having sex is smush. People smush. So,
Very safe.
what's that?
Very safe, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Is his name Craig Robinson? Is that the actor's name?
It might be.
He was in Hot Tub Time Machine, among other things. Okay, anyway.
Seen too many sitcoms.
We're getting sidetracked again. So, yeah, so we hear a little bit about porn, and again, those guys claim that, oh, well, it doesn't make a difference. It's not doing anything to me. It doesn't change the way I look at women. But, I would encourage them to look a little deeper, right? Because a bunch of the girls are saying, actually, we feel really unsafe and grossed out, right? Girls are saying that we don't want to hear sexual comments all the time, right? And the fact that those guys think that, oh, if they don't want those compliments, then why dress up, right? Why wear makeup? And what's the underlying message there? Why do women dress up?
To impress men.
Just to impress men, right? And if they don't want men to notice, then just don't dress up. Malika, I'm sorry to put you on the spot as the only woman in the room here, but do women dress up for reasons other than men? What? You do? This is like the Bechdel test. This is like turning my world upside down. First you tell me that, women actually talk about other things than men. Now you're telling me that women actually look nice for reasons other than to get men to notice them. Is this true? Shocking.
No way.
You've blown my mind. You've blown my mind. Yeah. And so, again, these guys are missing kind of a very, seemingly obvious reality of the opposite gender, right? Of women, is that, yeah, women dress up just because they want to look nice, right? And they want to feel good about themselves, right? Or maybe they're going out with their friends and everybody wants to look Everybody wants to look like rock stars, right? And maybe they're not interested in looking for men, they're just out to have a good time, right? People like to look good because it makes them feel good, right? The end. Yes, sometimes women dress up to get men to notice them, and sometimes men dress up to get women to notice them, but that's not all the time, right? And so, again, these guys are kind of missing a very crucial element of the experience of their female classmates, right? And so the female classmates don't like it and they wish it would stop, but the guys are like, oh, well, what's the big deal, right? It's just a joke, right? They don't see the experience of the minoritized group here. What about Shui Shui's sex talk? She was having the sex talk with her mom. What kind of things was her mom saying to her?
Where's she from?
Lesotho.
In Lesotho, there are a lot of HIV cases.
Okay.
So she was just care about that. Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay, so she was warning her about HIV and AIDS and sexually transmitted infections, right? Which hopefully most people should warn you about, right? You need to protect your health wherever in the world you are. So she was having that talk with her. What else was she kind of trying to communicate to her daughter? What else she said you had to be careful, right? You don't want to get an STI, you don't want to get HIV or AIDS.
Oh, so she's like saying don't have sex with a lot of people.
Kind of, right? She was kind of saying I felt there was a lot of pressure in that talk, right? It was like, you have to be very careful because, one mistake could change your life, and she's concerned that maybe Shui Shui won't have the strength to say no at the, in the wrong situation, right? And all of those are reasonable fears, and they're all things that come up during, sex talks with parents. 100%, right? Those things usually come up. My question to you is, do you think that Shui Shui's classmates, those young men, do you think they got the same talk from their parents?
No.
No? What kind of talk do you think they got?
I don't know, my dad high-fived me.
He high-fived you? In what context?
I had sex for the first time and I told it,
Uh-huh.
and he gave me a high five.
And he gave you a high five.
And
Interesting.
all he did was just tell me to remember to wear a condom.
But it's too late. You already did it.
I mean, I did.
Okay, but that's interesting, right? So the response to sexual activity. So Shui Shui's mom is like, you got to be careful, right? One mistake, that could be it for you, right? There's a lot of fear in there, right? Like,
He said be safe with him.
yeah, but Shui Shui's mom had a lot of fear, and she was instilling it in her daughter, and yet, your dad high-fived you, and then, said the stuff afterwards, like be safe, take care of yourself, but it was too late, right? You had already, the ship had left the dock, right? And so, nothing against your dad, I'm just trying to make a gender comparison here. Since we've got so many guys in the room, anybody's parents have the sex talk with them? Yes. Was it like Shui Shui's talk or a little different? Oh, okay. Sorry, say that again, everyone.
Everyone remember the very
Oh,
first time?
yeah.
The first time is very important. So, experience this first time with someone that's not you or you really respect you.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, do it just for you want, no for you want or you want to keep in your life these things.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yes,
Yeah. Okay. That's good advice. That's good advice. Yeah.
So, not directly, that wasn't in a direct talk, but indirect. It said, control your desires
Uh-huh.
until your marriage,
Okay.
and it goes for like everyone, the boys and the girls.
Okay. So everyone's got to lock it up until
And lower your gaze whenever you go anywhere.
lower your gaze.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like, don't look at someone
Is like
in a sexualized way.
in a sexualized way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just lower your gaze. That's it.
Okay.
Just control it.
Okay.
Until the marriage.
Okay. So until you're married.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a sister.
Yep.
So like when my dad high-fived me, my father threatened my sister's boyfriend at the time.
He did what?
He threatened my sister's
He
boyfriend. at the
threatened
time.
him.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
He's like, I'll kill you if you do anything.
Interesting. That's your dad is a perfect example here. Yeah. So again, well, actually, there's it's a
My dad is a good example of a sexist person.
it's a slightly different scenario, right? Because in one case it's you, and in another case it's this guy and his daughter,
No,
right?
but in
So
general, my dad is he's pretty sexist.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and most people are, most societies are, right?
I mean, it's where you grew up.
Yeah, and it becomes difficult because again, socialization is so ingrained in the way we think and what we believe. It's tough to identify these things, right? But yeah, it's very interesting that your dad high-fived you, and then in the same situation with your sister, like threatened her boyfriend with violence, right? Don't do anything, right? So that's a very interesting difference, right? But also a very common one, I think, because I think what you would find, and maybe our individual cases might vary, but I think you would find is that girls often get that sex talk, right? The sex talk, you've got to be careful, you don't want to get a disease, you definitely don't want to get pregnant, but you could. You have to be very careful, don't let guys pressure you into sexual activity, you've got to make sure there's a condom, and you've got to, but I would suggest that guys don't get the same talk, if they get the talk at all. And if they do get the talk, they're not getting the same talk, right? Their parents are not saying, look, yes, you might get a disease and you might get someone pregnant, and you have to make sure that you don't pressure anyone into sex, right? You may really, really want to, but you have to respect other people's wishes, right? So we teach girls to say no, right? Shui Shui's mom is worried that she won't be able to, sort of resist the pressure. But I don't think guys are being taught, hey, don't pressure your girlfriend into sexual activity if she's not ready for it, right? That's an unloving thing to do, right? But
My mom told me that.
yeah,
Yeah. I had two different talks. My mom and dad.
What was mom's talk like?
She's like, be safe, always wear protection, make sure everything's consensual at all times. Don't do anything, like, try not to do anything when you're under the influence because anything can happen.
Good advice.
And she said, actually I'll leave that for now.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice, right? And it's good, right? It's good that parents are talking to kids about those things. But I think the pattern we would find is that girls get a different talk than guys, and guys sometimes don't get a talk at all. I forget who it was. I had a student, and I forget where they were from, but they said they got this talk at school, right, in sort of health class or some sort of personal care class. They got the talk. The girls got the talk. And the guys went out and played soccer. So they separated them out for this talk, which to some degree makes sense. But then the guys didn't get the talk at all. They went out and played, while the girls got the talk. Here's what you have to be careful of. Here's, you've got to make sure this happens, and don't get pressured, and you don't want to get pregnant and all that stuff. Whereas guys got none of it, right? And so women became you know, women are the ones who are responsible, right? They have to be responsible. They have to control the sex drives of men, right? They have to make sure that nothing bad happens. Whereas, you know, men are kind of relieved of that responsibility and they just can just do whatever they want, right? Which is not fair. And again, I'd be curious to know, you know, if that's the sex talk from Shui Shui's mom, I'd be curious to know what talk those young boys got, if any. I'd be curious. What's that?
I doubt they do.
I doubt as well, but maybe, you know, we're making an assumption there. I want to talk about them as well, those young guys, because another thing they were saying is they were talking about the cow exchange thing,
Yeah.
and then they came up with the idea about the possibility that their wife would make more money than them. How'd they react to that?
They said that they never marry someone that makes more money than them.
They would never marry someone who makes more money than them. Why not?
One of them said that, the other was like, if she earns more than me, and I'm also good. But the other one is like,
Did they both say that? I thought they were in agreement, those two guys, that they were.
Two of them were, the third one was okay with.
Oh, okay. The two guys stand out in my mind a little more. Yeah, like, why do you think they felt that way?
Socialized with the thing that men should be the sole breadwinners of the family.
Okay, yeah. So socialized think that men should be the winners, right? They should bring home the bacon, as we've said.
like, they have been taught the one who earns the money is the more dominant one, I guess.
Little bit, right? Money is power, is it not? Yeah. If you control the money in the household, you have the power, right? And so those guys are a little bit nervous, right? They're worried. They're like, oh gosh, if my wife and we lived in a house and she made more money than me, that would mean that she has the power. And they're like, no, I can't have that, right? I can't accept that situation, right? Because they think they're supposed to be the head of the household. And so that kind of threatens their, it threatens the patriarchy, right? It threatens male power, but it's also threatening their socialization, right? Because they've been brought up to think that that's how houses normally are, right? Dad is the man is the
Yeah, screw that.
the man's in charge of the house.
Even like society, like the people living in the society, especially the elders and his friends, they're gonna make fun of him.
Right. That's another thing too, right? If his wife makes more money than he does and he's not the boss of his own house, yeah, his other male friends are gonna,
Look down on them.
look down on him, mock him, tease him, right? He doesn't want that. Yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting statement, right? And of course, those kids are just reflecting their socialization, right? This is their experience and what they've been taught, and it's a common experience, right? Even here in North America and in Canada, it really doesn't matter, I think, for most people. My partner actually does make more than I do, because she's been a teacher for longer. She's been a teacher for 14 years, I think. I've only been one for 6, so she's kind of further ahead than me.
Teachers earn more the longer they teach, right?
It depends. It depends who you work for, if you have a full-time position, what you teach. There's a lot of variables to it.
How likely stay at home and clean the house?
House husband?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take care
well,
of the kids,
and that's the thing. That's the thing, is that men can do that in Canada, right? And for the most part, most people won't care. They won't say anything, right? But do you think there's a lot of house husbands in Canada?
Oh no. I don't think so.
There are not, right? If people are staying home to, look after the house and kind of take care of the kids, if you're fortunate enough to have, only one person working, who's the person staying home? Yeah, the mom, the women, almost all the time, right? And again, we live in a society now where people can kind of do whatever works, right? I mean, if your wife is like, a lawyer and you're a garbage man, yeah, it makes sense for her to work, right? She's the one who's going to make, you know, $200,000 a year. It does not make sense for you to work. But even though that's the case, we still see that pattern, right? We still see men either earning more money or they'll make sure they work full time. Whoa, sorry about that. That's really loud. Or they'll make sure they work full time. So even if their wife is making more than them, the man will not work part time, right? Because there is this kind of socialization, right? This societal pressure that the man has to provide, and the kid says that, right? The kid in Lesotho said, he's like, well, like, if I'm not head of my household, if I'm not providing for my family, then like, what good am I? What am I? Right? Which is true, right? That's part of the socialization, but also kind of sad, right? Like, if he doesn't bring home a paycheck, then he's nothing, right? Which is not true, I would argue, right? But it was interesting to hear him say that. But I think it's very in line with a lot of the socialization we experience. Maybe one more thing I'll say, and I'll give you a quick break here, is the idea of men and women making more. Often men do make more, and the reason why is because of sexism in the workplace. And so often men will make more because, especially if they have a family, right? Because it's like, oh, this guy has a wife and a family, he needs to provide, so we'll pay him appropriately. But women don't get the same consideration. When it's a woman, it's like, oh, she's working here, but who's taking care of her kids? Like, she should really be at home, right? And so she doesn't get the same generosity given to her because she's not kind of seen through the lens of being the provider, right? So the man with, a wife and 3 kids at home, it's like, oh boy, we've really got to, he needs to make money because he's got to take care of all these people. But a woman who's doing exactly the same thing won't be seen as the provider. She'll be seen as, well, shouldn't she be at home with her kids? Like, why is she here? Right? And so, what's that?
That's so dumb.
It's so dumb.
People should be paid on their qualification and experience.
Exactly. Exactly. Right? But again, people are seen through the lens of our stereotypes, right? And if we still see the man as the provider and the woman as, the one in the home taking care of the kids, then that, those gender roles will affect men and women's pay. And they're one reason why men wind up making more money than women. One reason.
One brother and one son, their curriculum, the son is 2 times more than the dad because they live the Chinese one is more than
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, and so what country was that? In Iran, right? So yeah, so in Iran, the death of a father with a son and daughter will result in, more money going to the son than the daughter because apparently he needs it to provide for his family, or just because. Right. Yeah, so still that idea of, man as the provider, right? And the woman doesn't need the money because her husband will take care of her, right? So
Did the woman get any money at all? Does the sister get like any money at all?
Yes, I think, yeah, yes, but it's less than
Mhm.
Because back in Sicily when my grandfather passed away,
Yeah.
my father has a sister as well. Yeah, he left everything to my dad and nothing to my sister.
Interesting.
For his sister.
Well, do you have an idea of why that was?
It was like a business, and like in Sicily, like the older generation, actually still up till now, if you don't leave the country, you still think that only men should be the ones handling the business. Women are just at home to cook for you and keep the kids happy.
Yep. So still pretty clear gender roles,
Yeah.
right? And especially in business, right, where you know father sons are there's supposed to be kind of a legacy.
Yeah, it was to the point when I was starting to like understand stuff my dad was teaching me.
Yeah.
We wouldn't like talk about any business in front of women at all. It was always behind closed doors in the study.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
like yeah, in Sicily they have a thing like women should never be involved in anything to do with money at all.
Wow. That's a very that's interesting, and it's a very clear division between those two worlds, right? Like the world of business is the world that's it's the world of men, and it's also the world of outside, right? And then inside is the the home, the world of women, right? And it sounds like you're describing a very strong kind of barrier between
It is very strong.
between the two.
Some parts of Sicily are more developed, okay, but the older parts,
Yeah.
the more rural parts are still very old school.
Yeah. That's it's interesting. I was thinking of my grandparents, where this is my dad's father and mother, and in some ways it was very traditional because he worked. He was the one who went out to work, and she did not. He actually worked in a meat packing plant, cutting up pork all day, but so he was doing the work and she was staying at home, but she took care of all the money, and so he basically came in on Friday and just handed her his paycheck, and she took care of everything. She paid the rent, she bought the groceries, she invested a little bit. She kind of handled the money, and he just went to work, and then here's the check. And
Kind of like my parents.
is that how it works with your parents too?
My mom takes care of like all of the payments and everything. My dad just comes to me.
Yeah. Well, it's teamwork, right? So everyone divides their responsibilities a little differently. I'm just going to read what Hamad says here. The son gets more as he is responsible for taking care of the sisters until she is married. So basically, she's entitled to the money, however she can share. Okay. Yeah. So you see that, right? That women access resources in society through men, right? Whether it's their father, or in this case their brother, or their husband, right? And that's that's sort of very traditional and common to many societies, right? Is that women access resources through men. Men are the ones who control resources and own and have wealth or generate wealth, right? Okay, should we have that break? Should we? Okay. Have the break, and then when we come back, maybe we can talk about Mira and Marwan from the. Okay. Okay, people, and we're back. I don't know where everyone else is, but we've only got a few minutes left, so. Um, I think would you say this documentary is like somewhat interesting or very interesting or not really interesting, or what would you say?
What was the question?
How interesting would you say this documentary was on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being super interesting and 1 being not at all interesting.
I'm super
Super, okay.
Yeah.
Why do you say that? Hmm. Why? Why is it interesting?
Because it has like video.
Yeah?
They see into think here and see things here. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so it helped you to think more clearly about some of the topics we're thinking about in sexism. Okay. Yeah, I think it's certainly interesting in that way for sure. For me, like it was, it's very interesting to, to go to 4 like very different countries, right? They're they're different in the way that they're governed. They're different cultures. They're different in terms of how equal they are in terms of men and women. But it's interesting how these young girls are expressing some of the same things, right? Even in a country like Iceland, where they're supposed to be, the best kind of, or they're closest to equal as they are anywhere in the world, and yet Vigdis still kind of struggles to be taken seriously, right? And she worries that, she has a lot of pressure on her to kind of be everything and do everything in her life, right? And so, these girls are from totally different places in the world, but they're still expressing, kind of different versions of the same complaint, right? Is that they have limits on their lives, on their freedoms, on what they can do and what they can't do. And those limits don't really seem to exist for men, right? And again, it doesn't seem to matter what culture you go to. Again, sometimes the details are a little bit different. Maybe the level of inequality is different, but these girls are kind of expressing some of the same things. And again, we've got a few things mixed in there, right? There's certainly some sexism going on in all of those countries. In some countries, there's other things happening too, right? So Mira and her father in Jordan, there's a pretty strong religious context there as well, right? Jordan's a Muslim country. It sounds like her father Marwan is kind of reasonably conservative or traditional. And so, all countries have traditional and conservative people, right? And Marwan is one of them, right? And so he's got some maybe additional concerns or restrictions for his daughter, some of which that have to do with just who he is. He's kind of a traditional conservative kind of guy. Some of them might have to do with the fact that he's a Muslim, right, and lives in a Muslim country. What else? Anything else that kind of jumps out to you in this documentary as kind of important or interesting or worth commenting on? With Mira or Lulu or Shui Shui or Vigdis or Ross?
Don't really have anything to comment on. And I think that says a lot because I feel like it's a normal thing. We're all kind of used to it. Like, I don't think I can do anything about it as well.
Well, and maybe that's something we should talk about, right? Is that, yes, we can point out all of these different aspects of sexism, right? Whether we're talking about advertising or music videos or whatever is going on, we can start to identify these things. But yeah, how do you start to change those, right? How do you, well, that's his question, right? His question was, what's standing in the way of women being equal to men, and what answer does he give at the end? Yeah.
I think the worst part is the most often women that they don't know how to solve this sexism. know what I mean?
No, I don't, but you'll have to say it just a little bit louder because your voice is very soft.
Okay. I said, I think the worst part is the woman don't understand that something is sexy, and it's important to at first the woman understand it's bad for them, it's against them, or it's they can't eat. It's very I think yes.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
The worst part is that women can't.
I mean, some women don't know that it's their they are sexy and is something that's limit them.
Yeah.
You know, some of them think life is like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Mira's friend when they were getting their nails done, right? That's what Mira's friend said. She said that this is how life is. This is how society is. This is how culture is, and you just have to kind of get used to it.
It's especially tough for women in Muslim countries because it's closely associated to religion as well.
I think that's true. I wouldn't. I'm always careful to kind of like to not attach things to particular religions, but yeah, wherever religion is involved with something, it becomes more difficult to challenge.
Like the video, I can't remember her name, but the lady from Jordan.
Yep.
I think out of all of them, she had it in Catholic, like with restrictions and everything, and like the father justified it with religion as well.
I kind of disagree on that.
Yeah.
Like from first-hand experience of being born in some Arab country,
Yeah.
I've seen like women and men where they're working equally getting paid the same amount,
Yeah.
and they can wear whatever they want. They're not like forced to wear the hijab, like
Yeah.
we pointed out. It's like I've seen there like if you can drive a car, you can come at whatever time you want.
Yeah.
Because my mom and her friends, my mom has a license over there, so like she would go at night 2 a.m. to get McDonald's, and it wouldn't be a problem.
That's the best time to get McDonald's.
Yeah, because it's like completely empty.
Yeah. It's yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is that when we wouldn't want to make a general. This is almost not a racism thing, more of a religious oppression thing. But yeah, we don't want to generalize about Muslim countries either, right? Because there are lots of predominantly Muslim countries, and they're all different, right? Jordan is not Saudi Arabia, is not Iran, right? Is not Egypt, is not Morocco, right? They're all going to be a little bit different. But it is true that again, where religion is involved, it gets particularly difficult to challenge, right? Because it's very easy to say, you know what, Ben, you're wrong, right? It's very easy. Or you can say that I'm wrong very easily. But to say that he's wrong up there, that's a lot more difficult, right? Usually, whatever God or sort of beings you believe in, usually they're not to be questioned, right? Or at least in monotheistic religions, usually you don't question God, right? Or Allah, or Jehovah, or whoever. They're not really to be questioned, right? Religion is not to be questioned. And so, yeah, when you have a religious element, it makes it harder to push back. Yeah, because you're not, yeah, like I've been saying, we're pushing back against socialization, and socialization is all arbitrary, right? Humans have just made up rules about how to live. But if you believe that those rules came from up there, well, that's different, right? That's a lot harder to challenge. Right?
I feel like it could be used as a tool as well. Maybe like using religion as an excuse to stay in control.
Well, and that's true too, right? Many governments or rulers have used religion for that purpose, right? And many people have pointed out that religion can be a tool of domination, right? Or I guess maybe we'll talk about this tomorrow in history, but yeah, like Karl Marx says that religion is the opiate of the masses, right? So Karl Marx said that everyone is being exploited by capitalism, and religion is what soothes people, right? It's what tells them that it's okay, everything is fine. Even if your life is crappy now, in the next world, it'll be paradise and you'll be rewarded, right? And so, Marx kind of, in his way of looking at things, he said, yeah, that capitalism is making people's lives hellish, and religion is complicit in that, right? Religion is telling people that, oh no, don't worry, don't stand up to anyone, because the meek will inherit the earth, right? You will be rewarded after death, right? And so, again, I'm not saying that that's true. That's just what some people have argued, right? Okie dokie, people. That's all the time we have for today. Pack it up. Come back tomorrow, and I will see you then. Of course, there's no history class today because I've got something else. Yep, I sent you a message a little earlier today, but I gotta go and do a thing. I gotta go do a thing. So
Oh, okay.
that is it for today. Come back tomorrow. I'll see you then. Okay?
See you tomorrow.
You bet.